I'd like to call this informational meeting of the House Professional Licensure Committee to order. The purpose of today's meeting will be to discuss establishing licensure for well drillers and expanding the State Board of Crane Operators to include the oversight of water well, geothermal, environmental, and geotechnical drillers. We'll hear from DCNR and other stakeholders today. Our presenters will offer remarks as part of one panel. Members will have the opportunity to ask questions at the end of all remarks. So I ask the members to please hold their questions till then. And I ask the testifiers, we scheduled 10 minutes per testifier. So if you could keep it to that and make it more like a discussion rather than just simply reading, it is much easier for us to have that conversation than it is to sit here and listen to people read testimony to us. There's no further comments from the members here. I will have the members introduce themselves, starting at my left.
Good morning. Representative Nikki Rivera. I have House District 96 in Lancaster City.
Good morning, everyone. I am Donna Shuren, District 147, Montgomery County.
Chairman Representative Emmerich, the 137th in Northampton County. And Representative Marcel is also with us online. She's virtual, so just want to make that note.
Representative Burns, Cambria County.
Andrew Kozma, I reside in Allegheny County, and I also represent Washington County.
Arvin Venkat, 30th Legislative District in Allegheny County, and looking forward to the hearing. I'm the prime sponsor on House Bill 2076 related to geothermal energy development in Pennsylvania.
Tom Mahaffey, 106th District, Dauphin County.
To our testifiers today, if you want to introduce yourselves, and like I said, we'll keep it to 10 minutes, and you can begin once everyone introduces themselves.
All right. JJ Mahalik. I am the Vice President of the Tri-State Drilling Contractors Association.
Bill Rickart, past President of the Pennsylvania Groundwater Association, current Executive Director of Pennsylvania Groundwater Association.
Jason Floyd, professional geologist representing the Pennsylvania Council Professional Geologists, and also CEO and President of Mountain Research.
I'm Gail Blackmer. I'm the state geologist, the director of the Bureau of Geological Survey in the Department of Conservation and Natural Resources.
Yeah, I'm sorry, just a quick thing so that everyone who is joining virtually, if you can be sure that the green light is on and kind of speak close to the microphone, that'll be the best audio. Thank you.
So Gal, we'll start with you, and I believe everybody has an agenda here. We'll just go right along down that order.
Here we go. All right, good morning. I'm excited to be here to talk about establishing professional license criteria for water well, geothermal, geotechnical, and environmental well drillers. Driller licensure will establish statewide construction and siting standards for private wells through best industry practices, and it will institute statewide certification and licensing standards for water, geothermal, and environmental geotechnical well drillers. This has been a long-time policy priority for DCNR, as well as for a diverse set of nonprofit and industry stakeholders across the Commonwealth. Licensing is necessary in order to strengthen accountability within the industry, ensure industry construction and siting standards are upheld, and support public health and consumer protections. Water wells are the primary source of drinking water for millions of Pennsylvanians. Yet our Commonwealth is one of only 2 states to not enforce industry standards for well siting and construction, and one of only 3 states that do not have statewide industry licensing requirements. Proper siting and construction protect a well from common sources of contamination like septic systems, roads, fuel tanks, livestock yards, agricultural chemicals. In Pennsylvania, there are no standards required for well drillers and no protection in place for homeowners. This leaves many Pennsylvanians vulnerable to improperly sited or constructed wells that can result in water contamination, health issues, and costly repair. Even just one improperly sited or poorly constructed private well can threaten the integrity of neighboring private and public water supplies, potentially endangering entire communities. This means how your neighbor's well is sited and constructed can impact the quality of water coming out of your faucet. Additionally, Pennsylvania is experiencing more periods of drought in recent years. Wells that are properly sited and constructed in bedrock are less susceptible to the impacts of a long-term drought than poorly sited and constructed shallow wells. The drilling of water, geothermal, and environmental geotechnical wells requires a level of expertise in geology, drilling techniques, environmental regulations, and industry standards to safeguard water quality and protect public health. The Bureau of Geological Survey is currently responsible for licensing Pennsylvania water well drillers. However, that licensing is nothing more than a transactional process in which the company pays the department a nominal fee to be licensed. There are no demonstrations of aptitude or experience, and no professional or industry standards are enforced. If we want to ensure that Pennsylvanians have access to safe water supplies, we need to do what 47 other states have done in terms of establishing licensing criteria and what 48 states have already done in requiring the industry uphold siting and construction standards. Good news is we can water 2 plants with 1 watering can. We believe we can accomplish both of these important policy priorities through a common sense approach that relies on existing industry standards without adding new regulations or permitting processes. In doing so, licensed drillers would be required to uphold the industry standards that are set within the Uniform Construction Code related to siting and constructing wells in Pennsylvania. DCNR supports a licensing framework that would add the well drillers to the Crane Operating Board to build on efficiencies of an existing board. Pairing makes sense because these 2 occupations are both considered trades that do not require 4-year degrees. They're involved in pre-construction and construction activities and require the operation of heavy machinery and mobile hydraulic equipment. The licensing criteria would propose 2 categories of licensing for water, geothermal, and environmental geotechnical drillers. An expert well driller would demonstrate competency in 3 or more drilling techniques. A specialized driller category would show proficiency in just 1. For example, if a driller solely constructs water wells, they would seek the specialized category for water well drilling. Additionally, a trainee category would establish a much-needed entry point into the drilling workforce. A 2-year grandfathering phase would allow existing qualifying drillers to acquire their licensing credentials by demonstrating the appropriate footage of drilling in the past 5 years. New licensees would be required to pass an exam as determined by the board. Licensing would be renewed every 2 years, and licensed drillers would be responsible for upholding the licensing criteria and completing the necessary continuing education. This novel approach achieves a key objective: improving the quality and safety of private water wells while relying on existing industry standards and without adding new permitting or regulatory processes. Well drillers would be required to uphold industry standards established through the International Plumbing Code within the Uniform Construction Code and reviewed every 3 years by the UCC Review and Advisory Council. It would also establish greater accountability within the industry by requiring companies to demonstrate bonding and liability coverage and and ensure additional consumer protections are put in place in the case of an accident or incompetency. Because Pennsylvania for too long has not had accountability in place for this industry, it's important to ensure drillers will not be held liable for wells that have been drilled prior to the enactment of this legislation or for the actions of another driller. This legislation would maintain existing reporting requirements that have been in place for decades while adding a new category for well modifications. DCNR's Bureau of Geological Survey manages the Pennsylvania Groundwater Information System, a database that holds hundreds of thousands of water well records, more than 2,000 spring records. This is an important source of groundwater, water well, and spring data that is used hundreds of times a day by different kinds of consumers across Pennsylvania. All licensed drillers would need to be associated with a registered well drilling company, and each drilling company would need to register through the Department of State. In an effort to improve efficiencies and reduce burdens within the industry, drillers will no longer be required to register their drills with the licensing agency. They'd only be required to get the proper registrations through PennDOT. A few things this legislation will not do. This is not intended to regulate oil and gas activity. In Pennsylvania, the regulation of natural gas and oil drilling is comprehensive and stringent. The state requires permits and approvals for oil and gas wells and related activities to protect environment and public health. The process begins long before drilling and continues until the well is properly plugged and abandoned. This proposal does not require water well testing. It leaves that up to local and county jurisdictions. We certainly advise well owners to test their water annually to ensure that the water is safe, but we don't require that. This proposal does continue the well reporting functionalities that have been in place for decades, but it does not include an individual well registration requirement. This proposal does not establish any permitting requirements for well drilling. That functionality commonly occurs at the municipal or county level. Finally, this proposal does not institute additional environmental regulations. It instead relies heavily on the industry standards that have been adopted through the Uniform Construction Code. This proposed licensing framework has been vetted across agencies and is supported not just by DCNR, but by the Department of Environmental Protection, Department of State, Department of Labor and Industry, Department of Agriculture, Department of Health, and PennDOT. Additionally, the proposed framework has received support from a wide variety of partners. The result is a common sense bipartisan approach that establishes a licensing framework within the Department of State to emphasize public health, public safety, consumer protections, and industry accountability. Licensing framework establishes a fair playing field within the industry so that certain drillers cannot simply underbid by building inferior and unsafe wells. Licensing criteria is consistent with what many states have in place and does not establish excessive or burdensome requirements for acquiring and maintaining licensure. There are so many reasons why Pennsylvania should adopt this licensing criteria, but I want to reinforce these important points. We need to protect human health. We need to safeguard groundwater resources. We need to advance professional accountability within the industry, promote workplace safety, uphold environmental laws and regulations, ensure continued education, and establish ongoing workforce pipelines for entering into the industry. Proposed legislation is a long time in the making, and several attempts to bring accountability to the industry have failed over the past 30 years. The novel framework addresses the major concerns that have surfaced during these prior attempts, a deliberate effort to strengthen efficiencies and reduce redundancies while accomplishing our overarching goal of safeguarding Pennsylvania's water. Not now, when? Thank you for this opportunity to testify. We look forward to working with this committee to pass legislation that establishes the license criteria. Happy to answer any of your questions, and please feel free to reach out to me directly if you have any.
Good morning, Chairman Burns, Chairman Embrick, and members of the Professional Licensure Committee. My name is Joseph J. Mahalik II, and I am the Director of Drilling Operations for Terra Testing Incorporated, based out of Washington, PA. I currently serve as the Vice President of the Tri-State Chapter of the National Drilling Association. The Tri-State Chapter represents members from Pennsylvania, New Jersey, and West Virginia. I hold drilling licenses in the states of New Jersey, Maryland, Delaware, West Virginia, and New Hampshire, as well as maintaining my certified well driller designation through the National Groundwater Association. I am a third-generation driller and have been actively involved with drilling for over 35 years. Throughout these years, there have been a lot of changes and new technology for the drilling industry, but one thing has always remained the same. We are still putting a hole into the ground to study the soil, the rock, or the groundwater. Geotechnical drilling is the process of drilling into the earth to collect soil, rock, and groundwater samples, which are essential for assessing subsurface conditions for construction and engineering projects. The highways and bridges that you travel on and the buildings that you work in all started with geotechnical drilling. Geotechnical drilling helps engineers to understand the physical and chemical properties of soil and rock layers. The data that is collected assists in determining the proper foundation for a structure based on soil-bearing capacity and groundwater conditions. It also helps to identify geological hazards, unstable soil layers, and groundwater issues that may cause delays or failures. The data that we deliver allows for efficient design and reduces unnecessary expenses. Geotechnical drilling is crucial to the Pennsylvania infrastructure. Without our industry, roadways, bridges, and buildings would take much longer to construct, and the construction cost would greatly increase due to a higher probability of failure because there is no data to look at. As I previously stated, I am licensed in multiple states and must follow their rules and regulations in order to drill a geotechnical borehole, install a piezometer, which is used to monitor the elevation of groundwater over an extended period of time, or install a monitoring well to observe and measure groundwater conditions and possible contaminants. The rules and regulations for these states are put into place based on geology and contributing factors in order to maintain a standard operating procedure for the drilling of the borehole, the construction of the well, and the abandonment of the borehole when completed. These standards are put into place so that the soil and the groundwater have a far less chance of becoming contaminated during and after the drilling process. The standards also allow for more of a professional completion of the project because there are rules and regulations that have to be met in order to, number one, obtain a license. Number two, maintain the license. Number three, drill the borehole. And number four, complete any permits that are required. Each state has its own rules and costs for maintaining the renewal of the drilling license, but they all require continuing education. And they have a board that meets to discuss the rules and regulations. As of this moment, there are no state rules or regulations in Pennsylvania for drilling boreholes or installing monitoring equipment. This allows for less reputable drilling companies to perform the work at a cheaper cost because there are no rules to follow, and they may construct the equipment in a less suitable manner that may cause contamination. It is my professional opinion that drilling licenses should be required in the state of Pennsylvania in order to ensure that our industry takes all precautions to maintain clean soil and groundwater conditions. Drilling licenses will also allow more companies to be on a level playing field because each company will have to follow the rules and regulations set forth by the state of Pennsylvania. It is also my professional opinion that a board should be created to review applications and be able to make changes to the rules and regulations since our industry and the technology are always changing. The board should meet quarterly and be comprised of representatives from drilling companies, geologists or hydrogeologists, engineers, and representatives from the Department of Conservation and Natural Resources. I would like to thank everybody for your time regarding this important matter, and I look forward to discussing it more in the future. Thank you very much.
Good morning again. I introduced my first time as just Bill Ricart, Executive Director of the Pennsylvania Groundwater Association. I wear a few other hats, which I'll illuminate for you now. I'm also the president and current owner of William W. Ricart, Inc. We are a multifaceted groundwater, basically construction company located in York County, Pennsylvania. Our inception goes back to the year 1890. Our license number, again, you've heard of licensing, there currently is one, more for equipment than individuals, is number 0032. Quick story about that is my grandfather did everything, including driving to Harrisburg the day that the registration was open, and he got his, what he believed, license application first. However, when they issued them, they started in Philadelphia, worked west, York County. He got 32. That being said, my company is not just a water well drilling company. That is our primary function, but we also have over the years done almost all types of drilling, which would come under the governance of this board and also have been referred to this point in the testimony. We do and have done environmental, geotechnical, geothermal, waste investigation of all types. And again, our current primary focus is a water well drilling company. Given my age, I will share with you, I literally started in this industry in a family business. You got to picture the dynamics. The youngest did the work. The oldest counted the money. I started on the shovel, and I worked through the individual who operated the machinery and has done everything when it comes to what we do as a craft applied to this industry for our customers, to now I manage this company that does same things. At Chairman Burns' request, I've gone off script from my written testimony, and I'm going to just try to encapsulate, maybe direct your attention to what I've submitted previously, if you've read it, or go back to it, and then organize my thoughts at the end, requesting you to engage me if the opportunity arises with my allotted time. First part of it, we basically talk about how important groundwater is to not only to the Commonwealth, but also to the United States of America. Second thing, I'll just take a little bit of an opportunity to say, tries to express the concept that part of the reason why I think we're here today is that groundwater is very misunderstood. It is that thing which we don't see. By definition, groundwater implying beneath our feet, people tend not to think about or govern that which they don't see. But as someone who ascribes to other things in and out of this world, that believes in things, say, maybe not seen, I'll just leave that there for your contemplation. So groundwater is a very important part. There are other states, mentioned to the previous presenter. I am also licensed in Maryland. I am licensed in Virginia, West Virginia. Within the Commonwealth, Chester County also has a licensing process. I am also certified according to our National Groundwater Association. I have achieved almost all of the accreditations that I can have in my work area, except the one which I would like to have the most. That would be the honoring of me through my professional efforts and the dignity of my profession of a professional licensure to do what I do in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. Getting back to where the groundwater, maybe how we got to this point, is because groundwater is unseen, unrecognized. Why should we do anything about it? If you go back to my written testimony, the longest section that I wrote was trying to detail that out for you to make a strong connection between the relationship between groundwater and surface water. They're not just one. We have this thing called, I'll go back to basic 8th grade, the hydrogeologic cycle says water moves from the surface of the earth into the atmosphere, falls into the oceans, rivers, lakes, streams, aquifers, subsurface structures, so on and so forth. It's all the same water. So that's what the majority of that section is intended to do. And then the big point that I would like to make is that if we don't understand the connectivity between it, we lose the opportunity, and we also don't fully encapsulate our responsibility when it comes to the management of this resource, the protection of this resource. The current thinking is that we don't have to worry about that. We get the majority of our water from the stream. One statistic I'll draw our attention to is that any given point in time in this United States of America, there are 20 to 30 times more water stored beneath our feet than you can see physically anywhere. Please look at that. That is a true concept. So the when it comes to the management of said resource, we do have that responsibility, and we can do a better job. Right now, by not managing it through the implied implication here that we want a licensure program which would help promote better management of said resource, we need to, before we maybe mess it up any further potentially, maybe we can minimize the economic impacts to tomorrow or even future generations as far as what the lack of management that we employ to this point in time would essentially beget us. I'll read my last section because I think it's rather poignant, and I wanted to draw the verbal attention that it deserves. Of course, speaking for the Pennsylvania Groundwater Association, we believe that moreover, a sound licensure program such as the license being requested for water well drilling professionals should address an amount of experience required, 2, a level of proficiency demonstrated, 3, a measure of financial responsibility proven, and 4, a continuing education earned within the industry. I won't throw the DCNR under the bus. I think we all know they have something, and that something they've just admitted is not adequate. My comment in my written testimony, and I ask you for contemplation as I conclude, is that currently the fact that we're licensing only drill rigs and not individuals in such an important profession that has such a profound and far-reaching impact that can safeguard personal health, economic value of resources, is akin to licensing the car but not the driver, which we don't do in this Commonwealth, licensing the scissors but not the barber, or licensing the scalpel but not the surgeon. As an organization of groundwater professionals, the Pennsylvania Groundwater Association beseeches the Professional Licensure Committee of the Pennsylvania House of Representatives to assist with the development, implementation of a licensure program for the water well industry. Thank you.
Good morning, dear chairpersons, members of the committee, and fellow Pennsylvanians. My name's Jason Floyd, and I'm a licensed professional geologist in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, and also licensed in New York and Tennessee. I'm also the CEO, President, and Chief Hydrogeologist of Mountain Research, an employee-owned environmental consulting company and drilling services firm in Altoona, Pennsylvania. I appear today on behalf of the Pennsylvania Council of Professional Geologists, PCPG, which is a nonprofit organization representing licensed geologists and other allied environmental professionals across the Commonwealth. PCPG is a nonprofit corporation founded in 1989 by geologists seeking licensure in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. Having since achieved that goal, PCPG now provides numerous services to its members. Our members include both individuals and companies representing the diverse professions which are developing, managing, and protecting Pennsylvania's earth resources. Since 2006, when PCPG modified its membership structure, PCPG has grown to over 600 members, and membership continues to grow. PCPG strongly supports the creation of a state licensure program for water well, geotechnical, environmental, and geothermal drillers. This effort is not about adding bureaucracy. It is about ensuring that those who perform drilling operations possess the technical knowledge, experience, and ethical commitment needed to protect the environment and maintain the public confidence in the professions who interact with Pennsylvania's subsurface. Who are these drillers and what do they do? We got a water well driller right beside us here. As Gail said, there's over 1 million domestic water supply wells in Pennsylvania, plus an unknown number of other types of water wells and boreholes drilled each year. It helps to know what these types of different drillers actually do. Water well driller drills and installs wells that provide clean, reliable groundwater for homes, businesses, farms, and municipal water supply systems. A geotechnical driller drills boreholes, recovers soil and rock samples that geologists and engineers use to design safe and stable foundations for buildings, bridges, roads, wind turbines, solar panel farms, and other vital and utility infrastructure systems. Geotechnical drillers also perform mineral exploration for mines and quarries. A geothermal driller installs boreholes and subsurface loop systems that enable buildings to use Earth's natural temperature for heating and cooling. And an environmental driller drills and constructs monitoring wells and advances borings that allow geologists and environmental professionals and regulators to evaluate soil and groundwater contamination and guide cleanup efforts. Although their goals differ, supplying water, supporting infrastructure, providing a source for heating and cooling, and protecting the environment, all 4 types of drillers perform technically complex work that directly affects public health, safety, economic development, and natural resources. Each must have a minimal understanding of geology, subsurface behavior, and the potential environmental consequences of their activities. And just for the folks here, advance the slide. What are the drilling rigs? And you can take a look at, this is typically what your water well and a geothermal drill rig looks like. Quite a big machine. Other types of water well and geothermal drilling rigs. Geotech and environmental drilling rigs are much more compact. They range from all-terrain type of equipment with tracks or maybe big tires to much smaller, compact rubber tire equipment. We got to get into some pretty tight places sometimes. And even to the point that you even you may find a drill rig that's on back of a pickup truck or even on a little dolly setup that sometimes we got to get into basements of homes. The current challenges. Pennsylvania is one of only a few states that does not have a formal process to license or certify drilling professionals. Currently, any person may legally operate a drill rig and be licensed in Pennsylvania simply by paying a fee to the Bureau of Geological Survey to collect soil, rock, or groundwater samples, install monitoring and domestic supply wells, or perform geotechnical and geothermal borings without demonstrating any training, experience, or knowledge of geology, environmental, or safety requirements. Most drillers are skilled tradespeople who take pride in their work. Yet the absence of a recognized credential means there is no consistent benchmark for competency and no mechanism for accountability when problems arise, and no standardized pathway for professional growth or continuing education. This lack of licensure exposes the public, regulators, clients, businesses, property owners, developers, contractors, environmental consultants, and responsible drillers to unnecessary risk. It also disadvantages responsible drilling companies that invest in proper training, equipment, and quality assurance. Licensure simply ensures that those performing the drilling activities have the technical understanding, experience, and ethical responsibility to carry out their work safely and competently. And as these other gentlemen have said, levels the playing field. And drilling occurs everywhere. It occurs at our capital, it occurs in the woods, on a barge in a river, highways, stadiums, in our backyards, in the city, besides a dam, in basements, parking garages, fields. So there's no limitation where this drilling occurs. One thing with Pennsylvania is Pennsylvania has a unique geologic diversity, which I'm sure Gail can attest to. Not only in rock type, but also in landforms and groundwater conditions. The Commonwealth contains sedimentary, igneous, metamorphic rocks that have been shaped over hundreds of millions of years. Portions of northwestern and northeastern Pennsylvania have also been shaped by glaciation, which have left sediment deposits several feet to over 100 feet thick. Groundwater is found in bedrock aquifers, often obtained through fractures, joints, faults, and solutional voids, rather through uniform porous layers. These complex surface features vary from one county or even from one hillside to the next. Understanding this variability directly affects drilling methods, drilling fluid containment, the choice of drill rig or drill rig bits used. A professional driller must be capable of recognizing these geologic variations and understanding how their work could affect groundwater flow, quality, soil stability, and even environmental conditions. Drilling methods and equipment used in glacial areas differ greatly from those used in fractured metamorphic rock. In karst areas, an inexperienced driller could unintentionally intersect voids that alter groundwater flow. And even in agricultural settings, improper drilling methods for irrigation wells could create vertical pathways for surface water contamination from fertilizers and manure runoff. Pennsylvania's subsurface also supports diverse natural resources. Extensive coal resources, which have supported the Commonwealth's economy for over a century, but have also created complex abandoned mine void systems that influence groundwater flow and water quality in many regions. In addition, non-mineral fuel extraction, such as crushed stone, clay, sand, gravel, and limestone, plays a vital role in construction and industry, often requiring specialized geotechnical drilling to evaluate mineral reserves and mine safety. We're also a leader in natural gas and oil development, dating back to 1859, such as the Drake oil well in Titusville. Today, there are hundreds of thousands of abandoned and orphaned oil and gas wells remain, some shallow and poorly constructed, creating pathways for groundwater contamination and stray gas methane. Proper environmental and water well drilling methods are essential to prevent further impacts. And have up on the screen here our unique diversity here. The picture up to the upper left shows our various different types of aquifers. Picture to the upper right is the extent of glacial sediments. Bottom left is our coal fields, from bituminous coal to anthracite. And then in the lower right is the sinkhole map of central and eastern Pennsylvania. So I wish I could have had the opportunity to overlay all four maps just to understand the complexity and the diversity and the challenges that pose for these drillers. Geologists and drillers are professional partners in subsurface work. The geologist's role is to interpret the data and design subsurface investigation. The driller's role is to implement that plan safely and accurately. Both depend on each other's expertise. Licensure will strengthen this partnership by ensuring that geologists can rely on accurate, well-documented field results, and that drillers are recognized for their technical proficiency. This collaboration improves environmental assessments, enhances the reliability of geotechnical design, decreases groundwater quality and quantity concerns in supply wells, and increases confidence in data used by state and federal agencies. When all professionals involved in subsurface work adhere to defined standards of competence and ethics, the public benefits through safer infrastructure, cleaner water, and better stewardship of all Pennsylvania's natural resources. Chairpersons and members of the committee, thank you for the opportunity to testify today. On behalf of the Pennsylvania Council of Professional Geologists, I urge you to support legislation of establishing state licensure for water well, geotechnical, geothermal, and environmental drillers. Licensure ensures that people who drill beneath our feet, whether to secure drinking water, support foundation design, provide a source for heating, cooling, or monitor environmental quality, do so with the competence, professionalism, and respect for Pennsylvania's environment and their citizens. By ensuring that drillers are trained, tested, and accountable, Pennsylvania strengthens its ability to protect the public, groundwater quality, and natural resources, consistent with Article 1, Section 27 of the Pennsylvania Constitution, which guarantees citizens the right to clean air, pure water, and the preservation of the environment. This legislation is a practicable, responsible step forward in protecting both our citizens and natural resources while recognizing the important role that drilling professionals play in the Commonwealth's environmental and economic future. Thank you for your time.
Good morning again, and I will be absolutely brief. I believe PVA was asked here today to tell you that our problems have been fixed. Historically, in the past 15 years, we've provided testimony at a number of different committees, specifically related to the creation of well water construction standards, specific to that issue. And every time we have opposed that legislation because the Uniform Construction Code, as adopted and reviewed by the Review and Advisory Council under the Department of Labor and Industry, picks and chooses and votes to adopt specific construction standards for residential and commercial construction. This draft of the legislation fixes our problem. Section 512 states that water well construction standards will follow the Uniform Construction Code. So we are now okay with this particular draft legislation on that area. As to whether or not well drillers or geothermal well drillers should be licensed in Pennsylvania, PBA takes an initial neutral position on all trade statewide licensure. So plumbers, electricians, and in this instance, adding well drillers to the Crane Licensure Board. We are currently neutral unless or until one of our members would come and ask us to review.
Good morning again, everyone. Chairman Burns and Emmerich and members of the House Professional Licensure Committee, thank you for the opportunity to appear before the committee to discuss implementation of licensure for private water well drillers in the Bureau of Professional and Occupational Affairs under the State Board of Crane Operators. A Sunrise application was submitted to the department in 2022, and the department is supportive of creation of this license. Placing this license under the State Board of Crane Operators will allow for implementation to be done by current staff and would not require an increase in complement. With an estimated 620 licensees, it would be cost prohibitive to create a separate board only for well drillers. Initial costs would be limited to development and updates to the department's licensing system. We anticipate that the application fee would be approximately $90 for an initial license. Additionally, placing this license class under the Crane Operators Board will also provide an additional source of revenue for the board. The number of licensees under the board has decreased from 3,900 in fiscal year 2019 to just over 3,000 currently. Implementation of legislation creating a license for well drillers under BPOA will require the promulgation of regulations by the board and development of an application in the department's licensing system. Regulations are required to follow the requirements of the Regulatory Review Act, the Commonwealth Attorneys Act, and the EO 1996-1. As part of that process, there will be an opportunity for feedback from stakeholders and professional licensure committees. This process would take an anticipated 2 years to complete. The timeline of promulgating regulations would negate the need to create an application in the current PAL system. The application would only need to be built in the new Evoke system. In closing, the department is committed to partnering with the committee and other agencies and stakeholders to ensure that any legislation that moves forward protects the public, allows well drillers to safely practice their profession, and is able to be implemented successfully.
Well, thank you all for your testimony. We appreciate you coming here this morning and providing your insight on this. We'll open it up to questions. I'll start with a question that seems pretty simple. Gail, you had mentioned that they tried to license these well drillers in the past. What was the hang up and why didn't it happen in the past? What were some of the objections?
I wasn't here for all of those for all of those attempts, but my understanding is there's been opposition, as we've seen from some organizations, not just the Builders Association, but that there was at least one case where there was some misinformation that was sort of promulgated among the population that licensing was going to, or that registration of wells, it wasn't a licensure approach. It was making legislation that controlled water well standards, right? So it was establishing construction standards by legislation. And there was some misinformation that was spread that this was going to, that the state was going to start charging you for the water that you took out of your well, right? So somehow this was going to give the state a finger into your own personal water resources. These were all, these would have established those criteria under DEP. And so, there's sort of that whole regulatory baggage that comes along with that. And so I think those were some of the main reasons that our attempts have failed in the past, even though, you know, there were broad support from other parts of the professional community. It just didn't fly.
Thank you. I have one more question. Is there any specific instances that happened that maybe if somebody was licensed, it would have prevented a tragic outcome that you could explain to us? Like, why is this so necessary?
We get calls fairly regularly from people who are having problems with their wells, and a lot of it just goes back to poor construction. Your well is your last line of defense from whatever contaminant might be in the water or in the environment. And if your well is well constructed, properly constructed, it can filter out a lot of that. Still can't filter out everything if there's something dissolved in the water. And so, you know, people have problems with various kinds of problems with their wells. And we, as the Bureau, really have no recourse to help them, right? Because we have no, even though we have this licensing process, it's, like I said, it's just a transactional process. They fill out a little form, they pay, I think it's $60, and you're licensed. And there's no enforcement. The legislation that established that licensing has no enforcement. So we can't go back to the well driller. And so, you know, they just have to go back to the well driller and try to get them to make things right or sue them or whatever. There's really no recourse for the consumer if there's an issue.
It's shocking that you can pay how much is it? $60?
$60 and $20 per rig.
You can drill to the center of the earth, right? Like,
Well, the rigs aren't that big.
Mr. Chairman, to maybe expound upon, I think I have some information that could speak to your question as well. Yes, you could, and all of you could, with no training, no expertise, no demonstration, nothing, and everything we're asking for, all of you could do what I do for a livelihood. As an informational association, the Pennsylvania Groundwater Association routinely receives requests for information, guidance, documents from the general public. Because there really isn't a source within the Commonwealth right now providing it. We are very small, not profit. We can't keep up with it. I would refer you and encourage you to look towards, there is a national organization called the Water Systems Council, who actually mans a hotline. They're based out of Washington, D.C. They're partnered with an organization called the National Groundwater Association, where they literally have a hotline to answer all groundwater questions from wells to pumps to treatment to supply to how it all relates together. And they report to us on an annual basis. The Commonwealth of Pennsylvania is number one, and they track every call they get, is number one year in and year out amongst people asking questions. So there is a high level of concern. To some of the remarks that I made in my written testimony, maybe I didn't touch upon verbally with you. There's also the danger of the public has that expectation that our government is looking out for their interests and protecting them. I have a license. It is technically defined as a license, and you could have the same license. I don't know how long it takes them, but let's just say in short order to do what I do. There is that strong, I feel that being at the front level of this, that the Commonwealth connotes to individuals that they are safeguarding them through this licensure process. And it is a very slippery slope and a dangerous place to be. Most of my customers, when I talk to them, say, what? You know, same reaction I'm seeing from you guys. It's $60 and I could do it tomorrow. Yeah, so there is that component of it that we, through tying some of the testimony together, that just the yoke of, or the umbrella, if you will, the process, the structure, the rigor, the demonstration of all of it, continuing to add financial responsibility, will help to police this profession and the work that they do. Lastly, It's not like a game of horseshoes. And what I mean by that is close is not good enough. As someone, again, who installs water wells and geotechnical environment, all of this, you dig a penetration through the form of a borehole into the earth of a certain depth. You are exposing the groundwaters of the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania to certain risks. And if done improperly, those risks can be significant. It can be as simple as where we do something is critical in the process of that. And I think the overall point, the thing that hasn't been said yet, the people who are making those critical decisions, i.e. the people who have their controls on the lever of the operation, need to have, we need to vet them, if you will. We need to truth them. We need to prove that they can handle this responsibility through a simple process. Thank you.
I feel like if it wasn't DCNR providing the license, if it was some online company, we would be cracking down on that online company for just being a license mill. Just everyone gets a license. Just give us $60. We'd be cracking down on that company. I do think we have to do something to address and put some standards in place here. But I spoke enough. I'll turn it over to anyone else who has any questions. Chairman Emmerich?
Thank you, Chairman Burns, and thank you, everyone, for your testimony. It's actually very informative, and we appreciate your time. Secretary Claggett may have answered my first question with his, you estimate roughly 620 licenses. So my first question was, how many well drillers are there in Pennsylvania? And I assume does that answer the question? Or do we have, or is there any way of knowing how many well drillers we have because there is no license?
We believe our association encompasses approximately 60% of the individuals who engage in this process in this profession. The number that we believe as far as firms are that there are 400, and that the number of licenses would actually be somewhere between 600 and 900.
Okay.
Yeah. So the numbers kind of jive.
Yeah. Okay. So there's three types of well drillers. There's a water well, a geotechnical, geothermal. Will there be three specific licenses for the type of drilling, or will it just be one general well driller license? Do we know?
So I think I mentioned that there will be, there's two tiers. So you can get the triple, where you can do all of them.
Okay.
Or you can get the specialty tier.
Right. If you just specialize in water wells,
yeah,
you can just, okay, that makes sense. And just, can I ask a technical question?
Please.
What's geothermal drilling? I understand the water well and I think from your testimony, the geotechnical.
Geothermal drilling is where we make a penetration into the Earth's surface, typically through a borehole. It can. There's also geothermal that is employed through the utilization of a backhoe to a much shallower depth. In short, conceptually, you just have to get a material that would be a pipe or a series of pipes that would be underground that circulates fluid through it, kind of like a radiator, only instead of using air temperatures, which vary, as the last 2 weeks here in the Commonwealth have been very cold. The ground temperature, while it's been 0 degrees here on terra firma, has been a relatively consistent 55 to 59 degrees throughout the Commonwealth. We're a pretty north-south state. So the process of the geothermal drilling is to drill boreholes for the insertion of that infrastructure of materials that would circulate that fluid that individuals whereby extract heat or put heat into it, heat and cool their homes.
Yeah, very interesting.
I'll just add that that we're not talking about like industrial electric generation kind of geothermal. We're talking about geothermal heat pumps for your house.
Okay, much more simple. Just out of curiosity, I'm afraid that if I start asking questions, I'll just continue to ask more. But I try not to do that. I'm just out of curiosity, because I don't really know your industry, obviously. Like, how deep can you drill certain types of wells?
It depends upon area, and as Jason testified, we are a large state, and with that comes a myriad of complex geologic, topographical, climatic, and land use processes and structures. But as far as how deep can we go pretty deep. We can, water well technology can go as deep as the gas wells can go. It's not uncommon in just my area of expertise, York County, as well as the northern Maryland and a certain portion of Virginia, West Virginia. 1,200 feet is a deep, but it's not overly deep.
Wow.
There are certain
Sounds
areas
pretty deep to me.
yeah, certain areas where it's more common, though. If you were to say what's the average well that I drill in my part of the Commonwealth, it would be 300 feet would be the depth, I would say. So
Okay.
it's really like real estate, location, depending.
Yeah. So is there an aquifer everywhere? It's a matter of how deep you have to drill to be able to access that aquifer.
Yeah,
Interesting.
and some, JJ and I do geotechnical drilling. Most of the time, the geotechnical drilling for construction purposes is, several 10 to maybe 100 feet. But then like we said, with the mineral exploration, we're sometimes going several hundred to maybe 1,500 feet, if not 1,500 feet, if not deeper, depending if it's going to be a deep mine or a surface mine. So yeah, the geotechnical drilling can get deep.
Okay. And I'll just leave you with this. I was looking at your map, your sinkhole map, and of course the district I serve is the darkest bright green of sinkholes. So if you guys have any solutions to how we can address sinkholes, we're all ears. So thank you so much for your time.
Representative Shuren.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank all of you for being here today. So I guess a couple questions. They seem basic in nature, but why now? Why has Pennsylvania existed for so long without this licensure in place? I'll throw that one out there.
So the legislation that we operate under now, this $60, send in your name and address and you get a license, is from 1956. It's Act 10 of 1956. So that was the first attempt at any kind of licensure. And we have tried. I mean, I started to work 25 years ago, 26, 27 years ago for the Commonwealth, for the Bureau of Geological Survey. And I think at that time, they were on their at least second attempt to try to get a more substantial licensure. So we've been working on it for a long time, I guess, is the answer.
And so clearly your comments about, we could all fill out a piece of paper and become a driller. But the reality of that is there would be a lot more to it, right? In other words, whether you're working with other organizations, and you had said, in many instances, we're talking about home environments. So whether it's DCNR, or whether it's EPA, or whether it's local townships and permits, there's certainly a structure that's in place for you to be able to be a driller. And I'm trying to relate it to industries that I'm more familiar with. And so when I look at my husband's company being in construction and all the responsibility that comes with digging, whether it's township maps, everything that's on file with the municipalities, where the lines are, what they're responsible for, what they hit, all of that cost comes out of their pocket. So you have to be a driller that's carrying the right insurance requirements, the right parameters, the regulations to be a company in business that's taking on that responsibility to do that work. So getting this license or putting this licensure in place, how many more steps are we creating that aren't already in place?
My personal opinion is really just one additional step, obtaining the license. Now, sure, there's going to be some subcategories to that, but really we're adding the step. We need a drilling license, and pretty much you can go to a drilling manufacturer, buy a rig. They can show you how to run that rig, and you can go drill a hole. There's nothing else. Sure, you're saying you need the insurance and everything. They just want their money in case you break the rig. So it has nothing to do with drilling that hole. So, like I said, the mom and pop companies in the past, I think Bill can, really hurt our industry in the past, especially in the geotech. People, I'm going to say in the 90s, everybody's like, oh, hey, I can go buy a drill rig. And mom and pop, father and son went and bought them. And they really hurt the bigger companies that were doing it correctly and had the reputation. These people came in and just undercut everybody. So where if you have a license, a license requirement, then you at least have to show, hey, I had this experience. And that's kind of what happened in the 90s. So I think maybe Bill can attest to that as well.
It's really at the fundamental heart of thing. It's a consumer protection at its finest, and to speak very candidly, that consumer protection right now is inferred through the license process. And no offense, Representative, but I think you may have sort of proved the point I was trying to make. That the concept is that we've had a licensing process since 1966. Who would license an inanimate object in the form of a drill rig? My point, we license the driver of the car. We inspect the car so to make sure it's safe. Our drill rigs are inspected, and then our drill rigs are licensed. They don't go out. There's no AI button to press on what we do that says we're going, it's going to go out and it's going to do it the right way. So unfortunately, as someone who's not just here testifying to you about what I do professionally, we all live in this world together, and we all know that there are people who, when they have work done, say contracting work, a home being built, that they make sure their builder has an insurance policy in place, that he has any accreditations that he might want, that he makes sure that his subs are legal, licensed, and carrying the proper insurance where required. This is what we need to be able to go that next step. And again, I believe it's not cumbersome. The Crane Operators Board is already in place. Make us a portion of that, which has been suggested, and we can then make sure that at least that guy who shows up to your job site has been put through some type of a process to demonstrate that he's not going to mess up the job that he's doing for you. Because without that, the consumer has literally no protection other than the private sector and through the courts and how much they can and cannot understand groundwater. As someone who runs a business as well as then who is paid to professionally testify, I didn't say earlier, I wear one of those hats I wear. I have 2 degrees in civil engineering. I also am paid for my consulting opinion in addition to running and managing a business. There are a lot of litigation out there about people who maybe didn't have the job done the way they thought it should be done because they had the inspection of a blanket that was wrapped over this thing that was going to preserve their rights and protect them. And at the end of the day, when you pull away the curtain, it's just a $60 piece of paper, and we're trusting in the fact that we're going to do it correctly. I hope that clears that.
Yeah, I definitely appreciate that. And when we speak of crane operators, are we talking about it Universal being union, non-union? Would this all apply equally or only in a union environment?
All of them are regular. Yes, there's
all. Something you wanted to say?
I just wanted to point out that in our over 2,500 municipalities that you have to pull permits and you get inspections for your work. So theoretically, there are extra layers of review to make sure during all phases of the construction process that you are meeting a certain standard within the building code.
I'd like to add one, and this sort of goes to what one of Representative Burns' questions about case examples. Perfect case example where it was a rural township in Armstrong County where they don't have permits or anything, and we were involved with a environmental cleanup at a gas station, regulated gas tanks, and prior to our involvement, several months prior to our involvement, the water supply system had been shut down because a DEP sanitarian came by to get a cup of coffee, and the water smelled like septic. And a few months later, we got involved in an investigation for a petroleum release, and lo and behold, the geology up there, it's hard to get water out of. A driller, the drill rig was licensed, but not the driller. The driller said, by darn, I'm going to get you some water. He installed the well through the septic leach field of this property. and put in perforated pipe that went down through the leach field. And yep, they found water, and it was septic leach water going in for the water supply. And there was no course of action, no way to enforce it. But hey, the drill rig was licensed. So that's just one of other examples that, you know, Pennsylvania Council and our members, professional geologists, get each year on improper well construction design by a driller.
So I think it's important, and thank you for that. As the legislators up here, I'm not looking at there's no legislation that says what this license is going to entail. Is it going to be an exam? Is it going to be more schooling? Is it going to be, you know, something you have to pass in front of, you know, an engineering committee? That's not in front of us. So that's a variable that's leading to some of these questions. Thanks.
All the way at the end, Representative Mahaffey.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for your testimony. I walked in here today having no idea what this hearing was going to be about. I find it interesting. I grew up in rural PA. How many of you guys can use and God rest his soul, my father-in-law could do this. You know what I'm talking about, coat hangers. Find the underground water, right? It's true, though, right? And it works. And it's crazy that it does that, but it's to watch him. When I was able to watch him do it, it was kind of neat. You know, even to find water lines, right? Not only just underground water. Anyway, Bill, you kind of answered what I was going to get into from the question from Donna. But I think at the end of the day, her question here is, what is your license going to look like? Is it going to have continuing ed? Is it going to be that? Now, I'm assuming the board's going to set the parameters for that. Am I correct on that?
That is correct.
Okay. Do we feel that, you know, the board will kind of align it to what they are doing now as far as the operating, you know, crane operators and so forth? How do you think this will be? Because the money seems to be de minimis as far as $60 to $90. Then again, are you going to also have to do a license on the rig continually and then the driller, or will that go away and then they'll just have to pay the night?
Yeah, the plan is
think $90.
The plan is to not license the rigs because they already have to be licensed.
Okay.
So that charge, that per rig charge, will go away.
Okay. So that $60 would go away. It would be maybe up to 90 or within that.
Correct. That's the estimate.
Dollar amount. And then will they have their own input as far as the drillers to say what they feel they need to be licensed and continue to be licensed?
Yes, they would. All the requirements being established will be done in public at one of the crane board meetings. So everyone on this panel could attend the meeting and discuss what will be required for licensure.
Right. Again, thank you all for your testimony. I think this must be done. It should be done. I think licensure is extremely important. I think we should probably do more of it. And it really is consumer protection, right? We're looking at something, and that testimony you were saying about the way that gentleman drilled and had no idea what he was drilling into, that's a problem. And that's a real problem. And that's why if I'm paying, and let's face it, if I'm paying to get a well drilled, it's expensive. It's not a cheap endeavor. And if I'm paying good money for that, I expect a professional job done, knowing that you're licensed, knowing that you're coming there with the knowledge you need to do the job makes me feel a lot better. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Representative Rivera.
Just a few comments. As a member of the Environmental Committee and also a member of the Chesapeake Bay Commission, it will be nice to have Maryland and Virginia not pointing at Pennsylvania for yet another water catastrophe. So thank you for this initiative. Water. Anything that we can do to improve public health, and right now, especially in our rural areas, I've been told that there are 3 million Pennsylvanians, which are the vast majority in rural areas, that have wells. And so the more we can improve public health in our rural areas right now, which are losing hospitals and healthcare and all sorts of other things, whatever we can do to improve public health is going to go a long way. The ripple effect is certainly an issue. So thank you for this. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Carrie Orchard has a question.
I was just wondering if you could talk a little bit about what the education is like, or what pathways would exist for someone who does it right, not just someone who goes and buys a drill rig, but what would be like some typical educational pathways? And then is there a national exam or some sort of certification that maybe some are choosing to utilize now just to have a credential? And just anything you can share on that would be great.
Yeah, I apologize. I don't know how far back the national program goes, but they've had one that started as a voluntary member certification process where you could, structured where you could take a general exam and then specialize in whatever areas that you felt you wanted. And then there were some individuals who wanted to better themselves enough where they tested out and got all of them and were considered a master well driller. So that process exists. The closest state to us, the Empire State to the north, New York State, we're about 20 years behind them in the process of evolving to get to this point. They have a licensure program, which they incorporated during my working career, recent history, which involves testing, which they have, their process has adopted the existing National Groundwater Association testing that exists. The National Groundwater Association, in response to giving it that third-party arm's length transactional respectability, if you will, really tighten up the process. It is administered not in a room somewhere. It is administered online through an accredited testing program. I'm not as up to speed on them. I know what they do and that they're around, but akin to other where you go to take other exams. So there is that. As far as the education component, I can just speak to our neighbors. We recently, 2 weeks ago, completed an educational opportunity on behalf of the Pennsylvania Groundwater Association, where our memberships could have gotten 10 hours of certification for approximately $170. Maryland, Delaware, which is a combined association of Maryland and Delaware that I'm also a member of and I'm also licensed there, will be completing theirs next week at a cost of approximately $280, $300. The New York State has several opportunities as well, that these are hundreds of dollars, not thousands of dollars sort of things. Okay. Typically, as far as these certifications, they look like 20 hours every 2 years. So the Maryland process, as well as the similarity to the current Pennsylvania licensing process through DCNR, which again is just the rigs, but that is a biannual process as well. So 10 hours over 2 years. We also host another event where individuals can get 6 hours during a summer thing. There's enough things within, I say, a 4-hour ride of every person who engages in this profession in the Commonwealth to get the training that they need. These individuals also have training within their associations, more so to Jason's, I guess, which would be more technical for the geological side. And you guys have some drilling stuff as well?
Yeah, we have tri-state training days where we get approval. We get approval from the neighboring states, New Jersey. We have to submit and they approve so many credits for the day. And then the attendees, give them a certificate. They submit it to the state.
We also currently, within our membership and our structure of our organization, we provide a training for individuals at our annual event where they can come and they can take part in a half-day educational preparatory course, if you will, that helps them with that. I will tell you, just for consideration for everyone in the room, this is at my level of the industry, this is a very diverse group of characters. In my own employment, my own organization, I employ individuals who did not complete high school, as well as individuals who have multiple degrees at the collegiate level. One of the big fears and trepidations, it's always these things, kind of the implementation where the rubber meets the road is the success or the failure of any of these processes. I would highly advocate that some provision be made while we're all together during that grandfathering phase, that there are individuals who didn't choose to complete high school. It's not because they were really good at taking tests. So they're very good at their craft. And, again, I admit that to you in my own organization. I'm asking you to to control my livelihood. I hope this puts it in perspective for you, through making everyone who engages the public doing what I do to pass a test. And I don't know if they can pass it. I just know that they need to be able to pass it, and I need to help them be able to pass it. And if they can't, they shouldn't be doing it. If you can't pass a driving test, you shouldn't be operating a motor vehicle. If you demonstrate that you're going to operate said motor vehicle in an unsafe fashion through operating under the influence of anything, we have something that's going to catch you, and you will lose your privilege to do that. And if you should, in the process of doing that, harm someone in the private sector, they then have a mechanism, and that mechanism by which they then seek the compensation to make them whole for a bad day, akin to my bad job on the drill rig, is through private sector litigation, if you will. But that is all propped up by and supported by the backbone of our government structure, giving them the standard by which, did they pass the legal limit? Were they operating outside of the lines of responsibility that they were permitted to do so? This is another aspect to why we're advocating for this and why we need this. Sorry, I went a little far with that.
I'll add one thing real quick to Bill's comments. And Bill, looking for your input. Since there is a lack of licensure for individuals in Pennsylvania, you talked about, your associates drove out here, drove over here. Wouldn't it be safe to say that once, if licensure would occur for the individuals in Pennsylvania, there would be those opportunities then through Pennsylvania Groundwater Association? Even though you guys already do it, you would do more opportunities than other organizations would, such as, Tri-State, PCPG. We'd offer more training opportunities. Since there's no licensure, there's no real reason.
So it sounds like the training is primarily provided by organizations like yours. It's not a CTC track or a community college program or something like that.
The industry does have a 2-year associate degree program for individuals who want to engage in this. I've always had kind of in the back of my mind, if this needed to ever develop out and become, say, more robust, if you will, that there could be partnerships that would be developed there and opportunities as they emerge would be taken.
Well, I'd like to thank you all for your time. I do believe we've uncovered some good information here that we'll use to draft legislation. I believe we're doing a disservice to the consumers of Pennsylvania who believe they are hiring a licensed professional, and it turns out they're not. We're running a meritless license system here for drillers, and that needs corrected one way or another. Any final comments? So, again, thank you for your time. That concludes our meeting, and we're adjourned. Thank you.